Good evening. My name is Ron Nelson, and I'm going to be your substitute teacher tonight. And if you think back to grammar school and high school, you know what that means, right? When you have a substitute teacher. So people had to behave, right, Daryl? So we're going to take up where the preacher left off last week. You know, David is my favorite character in the Old Testament. He grew up in the fields, the hills, being a shepherd. And while he was there, I think he got a strong relationship with God. He felt God, I think, in his surroundings, what I like to call nature, and the animals he took care of. Shepherds were the lowest of the lowest, so, he had time on his hands to reflect. And I think at night or during the day, he'd look up at heaven and think about God, and then look around and see what God has done for the people of this earth and Israel. And we know he had a deep, deep relationship with God. And how do we know that? He wrote 73 Psalms. And all of them had to do with the glory of God and being stuff like that. What's that signal? Oh, I'm about there. Okay, I'm about there, but as you can see, I will be tutored tonight. And then while he was doing all this and writing the Psalms, I think he would take time to reflect on the glory of God and what God had done. And I'd like for us to do the same thing with a prayer right now, okay? Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather tonight. We thank you for everyone here. We thank you for our church, our preachers, our country. Lord, you have blessed us so much, and may we never take that for granted. May we worship you and follow you and do what you want us to do, Lord, always, because you love us so much. When we look at the world without sin, we see a beautiful, beautiful place. And we know that one day, when Jesus comes back, we will experience this world without sin, and what a glorious place it would be. Open our minds and our hearts tonight, Lord, and let our words sink in, and let each person here get out of this exactly what you want them to. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. You know, David is an interesting character because he started off with such a great relationship with God. And then when we get to 2 Samuel, we see him go in a different direction. He is no longer that shepherd boy that feels so close to God. And let's think about that for a minute. What made him change? I know the preacher asked this question last week or week before. What do you think made David change from that boy out in the hills taking care of sheep to somebody who would have somebody killed so he could have their wife? Well, I have a theory on that I'd like to share with you. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we say, the story of David is so much like us today, the world today. We see when people get everything that they think is great, they forget where it came from. And we think about the entertainment industry. How many of those people, we think they got the world on everything, and all of a sudden we hear they died of a drug overdose. And we think of politicians that, they get up there and they get all this power, and the next thing we know, they're not the same person we sent up there. It also goes for businessmen who, they build a big business, and they're very successful, and then they do something stupid. They fall because I think they forget where it comes from. And I think David was the same way. He forgot where it came from. He was so busy being a king and a warrior and all that, he forgot that young man that was out being a shepherd in the field. And I think 2 Samuel especially the last few chapters you looked at, verify that so much. That's probably the easiest trap that the devil has for humans, is to make us successful, to make us content and feel like, hey, we can do anything we want to. Look what all we've done. We built a business. We've been great. The people love us. And we fall into that trap of the devil. And like the preacher talked about a couple of weeks ago, spiritual warfare is where? In the mind. And when the devil starts putting things in there that you wouldn't think about while you're on the way up, but when you get on top, you think, I can do that. In David's case, he gets to the point where he completely abandons the laws of God. And we're going to look at that again tonight. And for somebody to start out that way and make the mistakes he made is hard to believe. Rape, murder, deceit, lying, deceiving things, people, stealing, almost every sin you can think of is in these few chapters of 2 Samuel. And it's just like us. Look how many people get in trouble, including preachers, because they go away from the law of God and the teachings of Jesus Christ. So let's start out looking at the 14th chapter of Samuel. And anybody that wants to pipe in and add stuff, feel free. I'm just an old country boy, redneck from East Tennessee, so if you got more knowledge than I do, which most of you do, just pipe right up, okay? Let's look.
I don't have any more knowledge than you do, but I was thinking about how Moses, God had led him, and just like he did David, led him through battles after battle
Yep.
after battle. But then they get to the, like you say, kind of the pinnacle, and how, he messed up when he didn't listen to the Lord about the water and the rock, and he fell out of grace and didn't get to enter the promised land. And it seemed like kind of David got into that same mode. God helped him, and he got complacent.
In fact,
almost to the point. Like
exactly right. In fact, the Lord said, I would even give you more. But okay, let's look at the first verse. Joab, son of Zachariah, knew that the king's heart longed for Absalom. What does that say to you? Where is Absalom right now in this part of the Bible? Anybody remember from last week? At the end of chapter 13, where did he go? He went to a city, I believe it was his grandfather, and for protection. Now, David's got a huge army. Why didn't he just go get him and bring him back to Jerusalem and put him on trial? He could have very easily. It was his son, and he loved him very deeply, and he did not want to punish him. That's very important in chapter 14. Now think about that for a minute. What did the law in that time, in that part of the world, if you murdered somebody, what was supposed to happen to you? You're supposed to be killed. If you got convicted of murdering somebody intentionally, your blood was supposed to be shed. And that's important that we look to tonight. So we know that the king's heart was that maybe, hey, it's great. He's out of here. He's safe. I don't have to worry about going and getting him if I want to. I don't have to worry about putting him on trial. I don't have to worry about killing him. So I'm just going to leave him there. Well, anybody read ahead, how long did he leave him there? 3 years. 3 years, okay. So Joab, now what do we know about Joab? We know that he was a friend of Absalom. We know that he cared very much about David. In fact, I think if you read this and read on, he loved David very much. But he also loved his country to the point that he was willing to do anything to protect his country. Now think about that for a minute as we get into what we're going to look at now. He was not only concerned with those two, he was concerned what could happen to his country. Now, so Joab sent someone to Teoka and had a wise woman brought from there. Now this city's just south of Jerusalem. It's not far away. And he got a wise woman. I could say something, but I'd get hit when I got home. But he needed somebody that could talk real well, could act real well, and flatter real well. So he knew the person he was after. Okay? Now, why does he do this scheme? He is friend of David. He's a friend of Absalom, but more important, he wants to protect his country because, think about it, just like today, we pick up a newspaper and we see one brother's killed the other brother because of a rape. Half the people are going to say what? That guy had it coming. He should have killed him. If it had been me, I'd have whooped him all and then killed him. And the other half of the country says, hey, nobody's above the law. We got to get him and bring him to trial. So that there's a split in the country that we don't realize. When you go into some of the books that talk about this, which really doesn't come out in chapter 14, but there's a split in the country. Half of them are for Absalom to live, maybe half of them are for him to die. So we look at Joab, he's really trying to keep the country together too. And what happens now if David should die while he's in exile? Who becomes king? Somebody down the line, maybe that the people will recognize as king, because they think, the prince has died. Now here's the second prince, but he's in exile. He can't become king, so the country could even be split more. So that's what we're looking at. So Joab sent someone to Teoka, and a wise woman brought from there. He said to her, pretend you are mourning, dress in mourning clothes, and don't use any cosmetic lotions. He wants her to look like she is worn out, mourning, been crying for months. She's all to pieces. Why? Do I know? What about David? What's David's character? Very compassionate. And he was known for solving problems of his people when they brought those problems to him. And Joab knew that, and so he was going to take one of David's best traits and use that to convince David to do something. So he brings this woman in, has her put her in all his mourning stuff, and tells her, here's what I want you to say. I want you to go to the king, and this is what I want you to tell him. So he said to her, pretend you are in mourning, dress in mourning clothes, and don't use any cosmetic lotions. Act like a woman who has spent many days grieving for the dead. Then go to the king and speak these words to him. And Joab put these words in her mouth. So we think this is good, but here we go conniving again. This whole section of the Bible is about conniving, about plans to do one thing so that something else will happen. Really human nature. When the woman went to the king, she fell her face to the ground to pay him honor, and she said, help me, O king. In other words, I'm in trouble. You're the only one that can do something about it. I need you to come on my side. The king asked her, what is troubling you? She said, I am indeed a widow. My husband is dead. I, your servant, had 2 sons. Now, think about that. We're going to get to that in a second. But think about in Israel, in the nation, one son is dead and the other one the people want to kill the other. What does that mean to the family? We're going to get to that here in a minute, okay? I am indeed a widow. My husband is dead. I, your servant, had 2 sons. They got into a fight with each other in the field. No one was there to separate them. One struck the other and killed him. Now the whole clan has risen up against your servant. Blood clans. Yeah, being in East Tennessee, everybody knows what a clan is and how, Hatfields and McCoys. So the people want to take revenge. That clan wants revenge. He killed his brother. According to the law at the time, he's supposed to die. So that's what she's telling him. Now, it's very interesting here. It said, now your whole clan has risen up against your servant. They say, hand over the one who struck his brother down, so that we may put him to death for the life of his brother whom he killed. Then we will get rid of the heir, as well as they would put out their only burning coal I have left, leaving my husband neither name nor descendant on the face of the earth. Now, one of the commentaries brings out something that I wouldn't thought about this, but evidently is in it. Why did they want to kill that other son? Greed. Read right here where it says that then we will get rid of the heir. So in that time, if there's no heir, where does the property? Remember, Mama doesn't inherit anything. It's the firstborn son, and if he's dead, on down the line. When the Bible says they want to get rid of their heir, what they're really saying is, we want to disperse all this property and all this money around the rest of his relatives. So they, in this story that Ahab made up, David would understand all this. Leaving my husband neither name nor descendant on the face of the earth. So when her husband died, what happened to his family name? It's gone. There's no descendants. The name is gone, all his possessions. And we know from the book of Ruth, who's going to support this widow? Maybe nobody. Her relatives have to, and if they don't, she's out on the street. Okay?
Don't they look to the nearest kinsman or something?
Yeah, I forgot the word. There's a. Anybody remember? It's kind of kinsman. What was it? Yeah. Okay. That's my helper in the back there. If you don't know. Okay. And okay. Then the king said to the woman, "Go home, and I will issue an order in your behalf." So he's going to, her act has gotten to him, and he's going to do what she wants. And he says, "Go home." That's not what she wants. So she talks a little bit more. But the woman from Tekoa said to him, "My lord, the king, let the blame rest on me and my father's family, and let the king and his throne be without guilt." Now, what do you think she meant by that? This is an unpunished crime. So if the king doesn't follow the law, then put it on me. Don't put it on you. Okay? The king replied, "If anyone says anything to you, bring him to me, and he will not bother you anymore." How do you think that sounds? What is he telling her? Anybody gets in your way, bring him here, I'll take care of them. You won't have to see them anymore. She said, now here's where it gets sticky. "Then let the king invoke the Lord his God to prevent the avenger of blood from adding to the destruction, so that my son will not be destroyed." Now, how does that apply to Ashlam? In other words, she wants the king to make a decision right now. She doesn't want to wait. She's going to push the king to make a decision, an oath to God, that he's going to do this right now. The plot thickens. "As surely as the Lord lives," he said, "no one hair of your son's head will fall to the ground." Then the woman said, "Let your servant speak a word to my lord the king." So the trap has been laid. And David has no idea what he's just fallen into. I think just like the devil putting that idea about Bathsheba in his head, now this lady has done the same thing. Then the woman said, "Let your servant speak a word to my lord the king." "Speak," he replied. The woman said, "Why then have you devised a thing like this against the people of God?" She lays it on him. All of a sudden he realizes who she's talking about. Just as it had been laid out, just as Joab had told her to do and put it out. When the king says this, does he not convict himself? For the king has not brought back his banished son. Now you notice she doesn't say what? Brought him back for trial. Brought him back for punishment. She just says, in my story, you forgave my son who killed his brother, but you're not willing to forgive your own son who killed your other son. So she's laying it on him pretty thick, and he's got to be thinking about this. The woman said, "Why then have you devised a thing like this against the people of God? When the king says this, does he not convict himself? For the king has not brought back his banished son. Like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be recovered, so we must die." Okay, what's she telling him?
You can't take back the life that's already been
Exactly right. Your first son is dead. You can't bring him back. You can't do anything about it. So why kill somebody else? Why kill your other son just because your first son is dead? Now, what would you say to that? Nobody's above the law? Interesting. The law requires it. And David knows that. You got to remember, I don't want to run us out of time here. Preacher will be mad at me. That David and his whole family, they were well versed and well educated in the laws, in the customs, and all. They knew them all. But did they enforce them? That's the question. Okay. Like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be recovered, so we must die. But God does not take away life. Instead, he devises ways so that a banished person may not remain estranged from him. So what she's telling him is, hey, God gives people a way out. God just doesn't kill them. He gives them a chance to repent. And that's a key word in chapter 14 too. He gives them a chance to say, "I'm sorry," and repent and make it up. So it's really what she's really saying is, why don't you do that? And let's see. But God does not take away life. Instead, he devises ways so the banished person may not remain estranged from him. And now I have come to say this to my lord the king, because the people have made me afraid. Your servant, though, I will speak to the king. Perhaps he will do what his servant asks. Perhaps the king will agree to deliver his servant from the hands of the men who is trying to cut off both me and my son from the inheritance God gave us. So in other words, there are people out there that want to kill, and she's gone back to her original story now, that there are people out there that just want to kill my second son. The people have made me afraid. Was David afraid of anything? Maybe another kingdom, maybe a war, something like that, but definitely not when it comes to the law in this country. And now may the word of my lord the king bring me rest, for my lord the king is like an angel of God in descending good and evil. May the Lord your God be with you. So she lays on the flattery. Man, you're great. You know what's right, what's wrong. Your kingdom loves you. You can't make a bad decision. They're going to love you no matter what. So now she's using flattery to him. Then the king said to the woman, "Do not keep from me the answer to what I'm going to ask you." He finally sees the light. He realized, somebody has put her up to this. Let my lord the king speak, the woman said. The king asked, isn't the hand of Joab with you in all this? So he figured out who's doing this. He figured out that Joab has figured a way to make him realize what he has done without attacking him, without, making him look like an idiot in the public, but bringing to his mind. Now, why do you think Joab just didn't come to him and say, look, and then Joab say all this to him? He was appealing to the fact that he was such a kind king, that he cared about his people, he cared about widows, he cared about... So the first thing Joab wanted to do was to get that feeling back in him, to get that forgiveness mood in him, not the hate mood. The king asked, isn't the hand of Joab with you in this? The woman answered, as surely as you live, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right or the left from anything my lord the king says. So in other words, I'm not going to lie to you. Nobody on the right or the left is going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you the truth. And I think this was part of Joab's too. And once again, cunning and deception. That's the name of chapter 14. And the king said to Joab, let's see, wait a minute, I skipped it. Yes, it was your servant Joab who instructed me to do this, who put all these words into the mouth of your servant. Your servant Joab did this to change the present situation. Not just between the two people he loved and were friends with, but Joab wanted to change the whole situation of the whole nation and bring the nation back together. And there was only one way to do that. And we're going to see that before we get through too. The king said, very well, I will do this. Go bring the young man Absalom. So he's going to send him. He's going to go get him. He's going to say, go get him and bring him here. He's going to tell him, Joab, go get him and you can bring him back to Jerusalem. And I'm not going to kill him right away, because we know he's going to be there 3 years in like house arrest. We're going to get to that. Very well, I will do it. Go bring back the young man Absalom. Joab fell with his face to the ground to pay him honor, and he blessed the king. Joab said, today your servant knows that he has found favor in your eyes, my lord the king, because the king has granted the servant's request. Now, if you were Joab, and this woman had just told you that you had just made a fool of the king by putting on this little charade, how would you feel when the king called you in? I'd be scared to death. He's going to get mad. Next thing I know, I'm not going to be here anymore. But I think Joab, by knowing David so well, knew what it took to get him back to where he was in that forgiveness mood, back where he cared about everything, where he thought through everything, got rid of that. If there was any hate there, got rid of that. So Joab knew exactly, because of his relationship with David, how to work this. Because the king has granted the servant's request. Then Joab went to Geshur and brought Absalom back to Jerusalem. Okay, so he's out of exile. He's brought back, but where is he not going to be put? In the palace. Now that's important, because we're going to see that Absalom was just as cunning and just as crafty as anybody else in the family. How long did it take him to revenge his sister's death?
2 years.
2 years. And remember, somebody raped my sister, buddy, I'd go get him right now. But he didn't. What did he tell her? Play it cool. Don't say anything. Just hang loose. I'm going to take care of it. So for 2 years, in his mind, every time he saw Absalom, what do you think was going on? I'm going to get you, buddy. your time is coming. I don't care when it is. So he figured out, took 2 years to figure out how to do it when he did it. So 3 years in exile, what was he doing? We know from later on in 2 Samuel, he's thinking of ways to get even with everybody. He's mad at his dad big time. Why? Because his dad did nothing to avenge his sister. Remember, it was 2 years and David did nothing to him. So it's got to have been working on his mind. Wouldn't it be working on your mind? And you're getting madder and madder about it, and you're figuring a way to get revenge. So Absalom went to his own house and did not see the face of the king. In all Israel there was not a man so highly praised. Now, 25 is going to tell us what the people thought of him. So listen to this. In all Israel there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the top of his head to the sole of his feet there was no blemish in him. Whenever he cut his hair of his head, he used to cut his hair from time to time, once a year is what most people say, when it became too heavy for him. He would weigh it, and it was 200 shekels by the royal standard. Now, long hair meant masculinity back those. You see pictures, they got long hair. Some of us would be in trouble. I won't mention any names, Terry, but that was really that was a sign of strength and all of that kind of stuff. So he wouldn't cut his hair. Now, once a year he would cut it, and it would weigh 200 shekels. Anybody got any idea how heavy that is?
5 pounds.
About a little over 3 pounds, according to what I read. What'd you get?
Mine says 5.
Okay, somewhere between 3 and 5 pounds. Okay, depending on which author you like. Okay, yeah, somewhere in there. Can you imagine? What does yours say? Okay. Can you imagine having that much hair on your head and walking around? No, I can't. Ron, I believe that. I picked on Terry and not you, so you're very good. You're welcome. But he was loved by everybody. He was good looking, so it was easy for the women to like him. Evidently, the guys liked him too. His appearance was part of what he was and who he was, and he's going to use that to his advantage, big time. Okay. Now, while he's there, back in Jerusalem, he has 3 sons and a daughter were born to him. So, what does he name the daughter? Tamar. Now, who else was named Tamar? His sister. So he's honoring his sister, and that's great. He's telling her he loves her. He's telling her that she's not at fault anything. But according to one commentary, it also tells us something else. He's never forgot what happened. It's still on his mind. His hatred is like a ember burning inside of him. Now, we don't know what happens to his 3 sons, okay? But anyway, that was the big thing. Absalom lived 2 years in Jerusalem without seeing the king's face. So what does that mean? He was basically in prison, house arrest. He had no royalty. He couldn't go to the palace. He couldn't do the things he was used to, maybe wear great clothes, maybe go to banquets, maybe all that stuff. He was in house arrest. Now, that didn't please him either. And it really didn't please Joab, because Joab thought when he brought him back, he would immediately be reinstated and be part of the family. But David didn't do that. So if he hated his father to start with, what do you think that added to? That just built the case that, hey, Dad done me wrong. Absalom lived 2 years in Jerusalem without seeing the king's face. Then Absalom sent for Joab in order to send him to the king, but Joab refused to come to him. Now, we don't know why But I think Joab had written him off. Joab had realized maybe he had changed. Maybe there's something different about him. I've not had anything to do with him. But Absalom was a prince. Absalom was at the height of the food chain. Absalom was used to having everything he wanted. Now, who's that sound like? His brother that he killed. Remember, we talked about, we know today that rape is not a sexual thing, it's a power thing. If I want it, I ought to have it. And Amnon was that way, that I'm entitled to it. How many times have we heard that these days? He was entitled to her. Because once he had her, what did he do? Yeah, he didn't care anything about her. He really didn't care. I mean, sex, he just wanted to have her. It was a power thing. So we see Absalom in the same light here. So Joab refused to come to him, so he sent a second time, but he refused to come. Then he said to his servants, "Look, Joab's field is next to mine. He has barley there. Go and set it on fire." So now we see his real personality come out. We see the hatred he has coming out in him. Here's a guy that just got him out of exile. Here's a guy that did all this stuff for him. And what's he going to do? He's going to burn his field down, which basically means could be no money for a year, all kinds of bad things. But he doesn't care. He's got a plan. And whatever it takes to make that plan come about, he's going to do. So there's hatred in him. The devil has taken him over. The devil has put that seed in his mind. And now he's getting ready to act on it. But there's one thing that's got to happen before he can put his plan in place. And we're almost there. So Absalom's servants set the field on fire, in verse 31. Then Joab did go to Absalom's house, and he said to him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" Never has he said, "I'm sorry, I killed my brother." Never has he repented. Never has he gone before God and asked for forgiveness. He didn't do any of that. So that tells us about his character too. Absalom said, "Look, I sent word to you and said, 'Come here so I can send you to the king,' okay? Why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me if I were still there. Now then, I want to see the king's face, and if I am guilty of anything, let him put me to death." In other words, he probably had a better life in exile than he does in Jerusalem. We don't know that for a fact, but you can imagine that his grandfather took care of him. He was, a big guy in the city. Everything went real well for him. Now he's back in Jerusalem. Ain't going so good. It would be better for me if I was still there. Now then, I want to see the king's face, and if I'm guilty of anything, let him put me to death. Now, why would he say that? Because he knows the king ain't going to put him to death. The king's had 5 years. He hadn't done anything. So he feels very confident saying this because he knows the king's not going to kill him. He's just trying to get Joab to go to the king and talk to him. Now then, I want to see the king's face, and if I am guilty of anything, let him put me to death. So Joab, verse 35, so Joab went to the king and told him this. So how do you think that made David feel? Here's one of his sons who's been in exile. David's had 2 years to realize he's probably across the street or somewhere, but I haven't seen him. We know from verse 1, David longs to see him. He longs to bring him back to the family, but now it's taken 5 years, and nothing's happened. Then the king summoned Absalom, and he came in and bowed down with his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. Now, what did that kiss mean? You're completely paroled. Everything is forgiven. You're back in the kingdom. You're back in the palace. And we know that Absalom is still plotting, and we're going to see that later on in 2 Samuel.
Would that mean he's still in line to become the king?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly where I was getting to, that I talked about part of his plan. The first thing that had to happen to his plan, he had to get back to the royal family. He was still an outcast. So if something happened to David, the nation could split or they could make somebody else king. The first thing for his plot to succeed was for him to get back in the palace, for him to become part of the royal family. Because the rest of what he wanted to do, he couldn't do outside being a member of the royal family. All right, any questions, comments, criticism, or jokes? I appreciate y'all being so attentive tonight, and I hope I haven't bored you too much. It's like a guy that was a member of the church, and he didn't do much, but one day they came and they asked him to preach. Oh man, he knew he couldn't do it. To his preacher and said, "I can't do this." The preacher said, "Look, if they asked you to preach, preach. If they asked you to sing, sing. If they asked you to lead a Sunday school class, lead it. Because after the first time you do it, they'll never ask you again." All right, Terry, I'll turn it over to you.